We turn now to Robert Manning, a senior fellow at Atlantic Council. What do you know? What's the latest that you know about this? We know that the missile, Yonhap News Service is saying that the missile exploded within seconds of the flight, that it went perhaps just a couple miles. Nonetheless, it's disconcerting, as we were just talking about with Mr. Chang, that they continued to test this system even in the face of American anger. Well, what's your response to that? Do you have any of the latest information on this? Do you know anything more than we know, that it was basically a failed test that only lasted a few seconds?
It sounds like another failed test. The interesting question is whether our cyber talents had anything to do with it. But I think you have to put this in context. They're trying to develop an ICBM capability and a series of missiles with various ranges. The only way you can find out, if it works, the physics are complicated, is to test it. So they're going to continue to test it, test these weapons. And I think that the challenge is, can we get them to the negotiating table and halt this activity before they get an ICBM capability? I think that's what's driving Trump's North Korea policy and a sense of urgency right now.
Well, there's a sense of urgency, but there also is, we were just talking about a few minutes ago, there's also somewhat of mixed signals as whether they want them at the negotiating table or they want to basically say you have to behave yourself at the threat of military action. And I think Kim Jong-un has proven himself to not be very responsive to those threats.
No, they see themselves as a nuclear weapon state similar to Pakistan. And they want to be acknowledged for that. That's something the world, and the U.S. especially, is not prepared to do. That's why we have sanctions on them. But military action, I would trust that the Trump administration understands that North Korea is not Syria, and that the chances of an escalating activity. I mean, they have thousands of fixed artillery sites within range of Greater Seoul, where you have 25 million people, probably on any given day 80,000 Americans, and they could wreak enormous damage in just a matter of hours. And they already have the capability with the No-Dong missiles to hit U.S. Military bases in Korea and Japan with nuclear weapons. So. I think we have a state of mutual deterrence that people are uncomfortable with and don't want to admit, but that's the reality.
There are multiple reports that Pyongyang has made a statement that war is imminent. They are given to fits of hyperbole at the time, we know that. But what do you think the chances of a preemptory strike by North Korea into the South is?
No, I think the only redeeming feature of North Korea is that they're not suicidal, and all their behavior is based on trying to figure out how to keep the regime surviving. So the only instance I could imagine them launching any kind of serious preemptive strike is if they perceived that the U.S. was coming after them and that they had nothing to lose. Other than that, I think deterrence more or less works. It's worked for the last 50 years. And I don't think it's fundamentally changed, although there's a debate about once they achieve an ICBM, whether it does change.
Yeah. Well, they have to know that in the event of war, the regime is over, don't you think?
That's precisely my point. That if they launch an attack, they're gone. Korea's reunified by force under Seoul's auspices and their history, and they know that. And I hope that the administration understands the risks of accidental escalation and so on. They've done a lot of provocative acts, mostly aimed at South Korea, and they've historically been very careful to keep it below the threshold where the U.S. would respond.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably not going to change anytime soon, and I think some of the comments that President Trump has made, we don't want to get in this game of tit for tat, threatening each other. The North Koreans are wonderful at putting up colorful phrases where, we're going to turn you in a sea of fire and all this sort of thing.
Right.
Most of that is aimed at domestic consumption. He wants to look tough, and I think we need to be careful because some things we think are reassuring our ally are actually making people in South Korea nervous and helping Kim Jong-un because he uses this narrative of threat where the victim, the Americans are coming, to try to rally people behind him, and we need to be careful not to reinforce that.
Atlantic Council Senior Fellow Robert Manning, thank you so much for your insight.
Sure, my pleasure.